story. Vicky's going to tell hers first, and I'll tell you mine, and then collectively we may discuss some other things. But I have no transparency, and everybody knows what that is. So I'm pretty open about my faith story. And I get emotional about it because I'm so lucky. Sorry, well, it's early for this. We do classes all over the country about relationship and mental health. So with that, we just want you to know also we got to leave at 10:45 because we're doing communion. So that's kind of where we're at and what we're going to cover, and think about some questions as we go on and some of the stuff we may bring up, and you may have some questions, and feel free. There's no questions that we won't answer, and unless there's something that we don't know, and then we'll tell you we don't know, and we'll get back with you at a later time. So I'm going to give this to Vicki, and she can tell her faith story.
And I'm going to use this.
Good.
So my faith journey started almost 60 years ago. I was born in December of 1956, a long time ago, before there was internet or emails or there were black and white TVs, all that stuff I remember come up because I'm old enough. And then in February, like many of you, February of 1957, I was baptized. So these are my certificates. I'm going to pass those around. So you can see, if you've looked at your baptism certificates, how they might have changed. I am a lifelong Colorado ELCA member. I grew up in Emmanuel Lutheran Church, which is in Greeley, and I went there with all my family. We always sat in the same place. It was a pretty good-sized church then. It's still there. It's not so big now. And then I moved in 1978, so you can kind of do the math. I was 21. I graduated from the University of Northern Colorado to Colorado Springs. And my church in Colorado Springs was First Lutheran. It's still there. It's not as big as us, but it's by far the biggest Lutheran congregation in Colorado Springs. Then I met Larry, and when we moved up to Denver, we got married at Joy Lutheran, which is in Parker. And we were members there for a long time. And then when we moved into the Denver area, we went to Holy Love, and then 8.5 years ago, we came here to Bethany. So I've been along the Front Range, but that's the farthest I've roamed, and I've always been a Lutheran. So if you've had a chance to see those certificates, you'll see 4 key names there. 4 of my key faith formers, my mom and my dad, Gordon and Janice Johnson, and then my aunt and my uncle, Leroy and Phyllis Johnson. And Leroy and Phyllis are my godparents, and my parents, of course, were my parents. And so the first huge memory I have of my faith story is not a happy story, but it turns out to be an important part of my life. And so my birthday's December 16th, and so in 1964, I was 8 years old. And a few days later, on December 29th, my father was killed in an accident. And so not only was my world shaken, but as you can imagine, everybody in my world, all the people I loved, all the people I knew, they were also in grief. And because my dad had died, and it was an unexpected death, and it doesn't matter if it's expected or unexpected. So I was watching all these people around me to see what they were going to do with this grief, and what is this going to mean for our family. And my paternal grandparents, my dad's parents, were the strongest faith formers in my life, right after my mom. And I watched what it did to them. But then after they were able to come out of the dredges of their grief, their faith was actually stronger than it had ever been. And the part of my faith story that my mom played in this, you guys won't understand what this means, but in the 1950s when my parents got married, my mom was a Catholic and my father was a Lutheran. And the only way I can put it in your world now is if you decided to marry a Muslim, like what you just learned last week. That's how much different between Catholic and Lutherans were in the 1950s. So there was this huge brouhaha between my grandparents because they're going, okay, so you can't both rewrite Lutheran, Catholic. What are you going to do? And my mom decided that she was going to join the Lutheran faith so that my brother and I could be raised as Lutherans. So fast forward, then my dad dies. And what's amazing to me now, looking back as an adult, her parents still went to the Catholic Church. And when we had events at our Lutheran church, they would come because that was us, my brother and I. But Mom always stuck to the promise that she made to my dad, that we would be raised as Lutherans. My brother is still very active in the Lutheran church. He lives in Chapel, Nebraska, as am I. And so imagine how tough that, I think back as a kid now, how tough that must have been on my mom to make that decision, to stick with the Lutheran Church, even though it might have been easier for us to go to the Catholic Church with her, but she kept that promise. So what a tremendous faith story my mom had for me in that. She made sure we got to confirmation. Like many of you, I was confirmed in the 9th grade, and I was lucky enough to be standing there with my cousin and another cousin. And we were baptized, confirmed, and graduated, all at the same school, all together. So that was really cool. And then the next big part in my faith story after I was 8, and I mean, I remember confirmation, but all we had was the pastor. We didn't have opportunities like this to hear from other people. We just were in classes with the pastor for 3 years. Funny story, I can remember, my brother's a year younger than I am, and he and my cousin were always getting into trouble. So instead of being in confirmation class where they belonged, they would hide in nice weather down in the window wells and stuff, so that the pastor had to go look for them, and I didn't do any of that kind of stuff, but they did.
Sure.
And then I met Larry. I was in my early 20s, and he was already a Lutheran. He'll share his faith story. And so I'm going, well, this will work. And we got married about 10 years after we met, and the Lord has led us to do tremendous things. Probably the end that I want to share is I retired from teaching in 5 years ago, in 2011, and I did it because my mom had Alzheimer's, and she since has died from Alzheimer's. She died about 3.5 years ago, and I had too much on my plate, so I had to quit teaching school to focus on taking care of my mom. But I was only 54, and so I really didn't plan on not working at 54. But then the Lord set us right in the sanctuary Thanksgiving service in 2011, and this guy named Michael Peterson was singing. And then this gal named Heather Ely came and told us about Project Sanctuary. And I was sitting in the choir, Larry was ushering, we weren't even sitting next to each other. We both walked out to the car and we said, we've got to be involved with this Project Sanctuary thing. And so that really is what the direction the Lord has taken us in places that we couldn't have imagined. Not only do we help at Project Sanctuary retreats, we just did our 42nd one, so we're really involved. We have learned how to help couples to build their relationships. And if their relationships are broken or if they're not broken, to make them better. And that helps all of you, because if your parents stay together, then you learn how to have good role models for when you become parents and when you're married to someone significant. So that's it. That's my faith story. Yes?
Can you tell us a little bit more about Project Sanctuary?
Sure. Project Sanctuary was formed in Colorado and now is in 5 states. And what they do is for a 6-day retreat, they bring military families together to reconnect. Because military families, when the mom or dad go and serve in a country, they usually go right now to Iraq or Afghanistan, and they come back. They haven't been with their family for a year. And they're different and their family's different, so they have to reconnect. So we have these retreats to have them come and reconnect so they're stronger as a family. Yeah. And Larry and I teach the healthy marriage part, but we also go up there to help the couples, the families reconnect. So thank you. That's what Project Sanctuary is.
Just to touch on that, and then we'll digress, is we work a lot with PTSD. Everybody here probably knows about PTSD, or do we not? You know, traumatic brain, and then you have TBI, traumatic brain injury, usually happens, you know, and something like that. And because of what we're trained and my military background, we work a lot with that. So it was a calling that come to us beyond our wildest dreams. We never thought we'd be that much involved. And we're both retired and we travel all over. We've been to Texas, Utah, going to New York, and we do it to help people, because we certainly, if I had to do this for a living, I wouldn't do it. So enough on Project Sanctuary, but keep that in the back of your mind, so when we have a question answer session, if you have more questions about that, be fine. Well, my story is not quite as pretty as Vicky's. Raised in a poverty family back in Kansas, raised as a Catholic, and not poor, but poverty. A lot of kids and things like that. So that's kind of what went on in my life, and they kind of struggled along, and I made several bad choices in my life. I haven't made them since 25 years I've been with her, but So my first experience was that I got in some trouble. My dad was a deputy sheriff and dropped out of school and went to service. That was a choice, or go to jail. And he was really nice about it. I asked him how long I'd be in jail. And he said, till I straightened up. And I said, well, maybe I should go ahead and go into service. And so the reason I tell that story is because I went back to high school and college while I was in the service and did that. And then as I was in there, I got kind of continued on the wild side that I had. I'm not proud of it necessarily now, but that was what we did. And a lot of drinking and things like that. And I was stationed in Wichita, Kansas, and I met my first wife, Judy. And Judy was a Methodist, and a devout Methodist, and at the time I was waffling about what I was doing in my life. I just know that I wanted to marry Judy. And so we finally got married in the Methodist church. So that kind of broke my tradition of Catholic. And then she was a nurse, and then a little bit later we decided to have some children, so she stopped up in Grand Forks, and sure enough, we thought we was going to have a child within a year. Sure enough, after our adoption papers in California, we had our first child, so a total of 10 years. And Judy and I ended up having 3 boys. And so now we got 3 sons, and I say we because we're all together, 6 granddaughters and a grandson. But what happened on that trip is Judy and I never really knew what we was going to do with our religion. It was always, she's Methodist and I'm Catholic, and so we decided maybe do nothing. But then our oldest son, Greg, came alive, and I was down at the club on a military base and ran into a guy, and I'll never forget it. I'm old, I'm 74, and this is a long time ago. But I remember this guy because he changed my life. It was Pastor Hammond, and he was a Baptist minister. And he says, why don't you come to class, see if it would work out for you and Judy. And just to see, because you'd have a compromise. And we went, we liked him, and that's what we did. So we could raise our son, as a Lutheran. Well, as time went on, 4 years later, we had another son named Aaron, and 2 years later, we had another son named Kevin. And we was very much involved in the church. I had a Vietnam tour, so I was away from, right after Greg was born, I went over to Vietnam and spent some time over there, and got back into some real serious drinking again. And I don't know, doesn't make any difference what the reason is, but we come back, and then I was stationed in Colorado Springs, and we were very much involved in the church in Colorado Springs, not First Lutheran, but another church there. So we raised our kids there in Colorado Springs and did the best we could. And they went, hey, I can remember back, they went to Rainbow Trails and all those different things we do. So as you can tell, my life has been up and down and up and down and up and down because of bad choices. And I talk about bad choices because it's not because I'm, again, proud of it, but you're going to probably make some choices in your life that you shouldn't make. But the Lord is there. And I wouldn't be where I'm at today without Vicki and the Lord to always pick me up. So things happen, and I did bad choices and ended up causing a divorce. Unfortunately, I met Vicki, so I've had 2 phenomenal people in my life to work on it. And one of the things my sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous 28 years ago said, don't give up dipping. I used to chew tobacco too, because I played baseball all over the country. So I did all the things maybe I shouldn't have done. But I wanted to marry Vicki. And he said, no, you got to sober up, and for 1 year at least, because I thought I was doing just fine, but evidently I wasn't what they thought I was. So I did. And a year later, I met Vicki, and it changed our whole life. And then we got more involved because of her. She was a leader. And if you'd ever come to one of our sessions, you'd know that she leads it, and I just kind of follow and do my thing. But my faith got stronger and stronger and stronger. Now, how strong is it? It's a lot stronger than it was. There's nobody that's gonna have a perfect faith as I know of. But you have the opportunity to do those. So we get involved in these things, and sometimes it's a selfish thing for me, because we learn so much about the classes to help people. It makes me feel good to help people. It makes us feel blessed that we're asked to come in and talk to you kids and share some of our faith story. But always remember, no matter what happens, if there's, you always got